only a few months ago, I was in the midst of a depression. I think just feeling really beat up by the world, just
Yes.
and the state of the affairs. And I said, I need to kind of just bring on some friends onto the podcast. So I emailed Larry, and
Yeah.
we got together here. And
Fun.
And it really was cathartic, actually,
Yeah.
to bring on people and to try to, for a while, just change the focus of what I was trying to do with this particular
So what was it prior to then? Prior to bringing in
Oh.
more intimate people, was it more professional and bringing in like the young hot
yeah,
things?
there's a bit of that, to, which I still do, but I'm really trying to get to a point where it's very curated, which should be, for God's sake, but to the point where it's curated around the people I'm interested in talking to, and feeling like that should be enough for the people that listen or that might come across my show. I'm just, doing very specific types of things, and I'm allowing myself to kind of focus on that. So it is nice to have a circle of people that I keep coming back to. I think Larry has been on maybe five times over the years.
Fun. Well,
It's
he's
been
a
while.
good, he would never admit it, but he does like to talk.
Oh, I know.
No,
but
it's good though. He's always like, God, I really hate being on the phone. And then like 45 minutes later, I'm like,
Really?
really, Larry? But, then again, he's a performer. Even when he's making dinner, he's performing.
Right. He's a natural. And he's so articulate, not in the sense that he knows words,
Right.
though there is that, but he just is thoughtful and can articulate his thoughts really well. Yeah. So it's fun.
And he does get impassioned.
But it was from seeing him in a few movies, just little parts, and I said, I really want to meet him and talk to him.
How long ago was that? Because you've known him a while. Right?
5 years.
Only 5? Okay.
4, 5, not that long. I was aware of him for a long time.
Right.
But then I saw him do a couple of things, and I said, I just get into my head. And those are the people that I want to get on the show,
Yeah.
And they're life partners.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. Oh, my God. What a life.
Beck Underwood. I guess what's right upon us here right now is the Creepy Christmas Film Festival, right?
Yes.
Which, how many years have you been curating?
So here's the deal. So the Creepy Christmas Film Festival, 10 years ago, I had this idea. Glass Eye Pix is really interested, primarily, they make movies so that they can make swag. Larry loves ephemera and objects, as you can see. He would love to have action figures from any of his movies. So one of the things I thought would be a cool product was to do sort of alternative takes on the Advent calendar. So the first one, so there were 3. There was Halloween, which was a natural. It was an October one every, from the 1st through the 30th, you opened up these fun little windows and there was something behind. We did a Kama Sutra one, which was sort of saucy little pictures for Valentine's. That was February 1 through 14. Those were both illustrated by Bram Ravel, who's a Glass Eye regular and does a lot of storyboard art, and he's an amazing comic book artist and writer. And then my baby was the Creepy Christmas calendar. So I made this giant diorama. I collect a lot of doll houses and dolls and old toys, and that whole Island of Misfit Toys vibe is like totally my jam. So I made this huge diorama in my barn upstate with doll houses and taxidermy and lots of glitter and glue. And I photographed that, and then I photographed 25 little scenarios, little vignettes with dolls and skeletons and just little things that were slightly off. And those were the windows. When you opened up, those were the images. So after I did that, I thought, oh, there's something more here. So my first idea was to I called 25 different filmmakers that I knew. And I said, I'm doing this festival. I'm going to send some objects to you, and I need you to make a short film. And they were like, okay. That was in September, before the December thing. So it was only a couple months ahead. So I packed up the objects from each window. Like, let's say, Jim Mickle got this one old doll. Other people got whatever was in the window. They got sent. So the only other thing was between 30 seconds and 3 to 5 minutes. I mean, the shorts in Creepy Christmas are genuinely short. They're not like 15-minute movies.
5 minutes.
Yeah. And so that was the only thing. And I got the movies back sometimes the night before they were going to premiere. And so that was the 2008 festival. It was super fun. And at that point, I also invited people that weren't quote-unquote real filmmakers, but maybe they were performance artists or poets or graphic artists. And I just thought this is kind of a cool way to have people just throw down and say, let's make a movie. And frankly, 10 years ago, the whole landscape was a little different. I mean, I think we all shot on little point and shoot cameras. It was very low tech. I mean, I looked at the resolution on some of the movies the other day, and they were very, small. So it really was sort of like a let's put on a show kind of gang. And so I hadn't really thought about doing another one. And then I was talking to Ben Duff, who is a Glass Eye regular. He works on a lot of the movies. And, he was expressing, he was maybe 14 when the first one came out, So he's young. And he basically, we started like talking about it and really reminiscing and saying how cool it was. And even some of the odd parts of it were what made it so great. So I was like, we should do it again. And he's like, yeah, you should do it again. And I was like, should we do it again? And so I was like, will you help me? And so he just said yes. I was like, okay, I have one partner to help me co-curate. He's an alumni of RISD, so he invited a bunch of his peeps from there. We asked some of the originals. We went to new people. So we have a really cool lineup. And once again, I would say this time there's probably more real filmmakers, but it's a great lineup. Animators, people from theater, live action directors, a whole bunch.
So let's just name some of them more that maybe they've been on the show, like Jim Mickle, even though that was the first season.
Jim Mickle did one last time. Mary Herron did one for the last festival, which was super great.
It's American Psycho, for those who listen.
Yeah, she did a really great short called Night Before Christmas, and she's of
American
course
Psycho.
from American Psycho, and also Alias Grace is her new cool show that's out on Netflix.
She's prescient because she made her lead character in perhaps her most famous movie, or it's up there, inspired by our president. So
scary!
Years before he was elected president,
yes,
right?
Yes,
he based
definitely.
himself on.
Yeah, she definitely got her finger on the pulse, that one. We had in the last one we had J.T. Petty, who's kind of does everything from J.T. Petty does horror movies, but also does a lot of. I think he's most famous for a lot of video games and stuff that he's worked on. And Larry Fessenden, of course. This time around, we have Jen Wexler. It's really exciting. She's like in between doing so much festival work for The Ranger. She threw down and she has made an amazing short. Mickey Keating, who is another person. For me, it was very touching when you send out the email inviting people and you don't really know how they're going to respond. And he responded back, I've been waiting to get this email since the first festival.
Wow.
Once again,
That's
8 years, 10 years ago, I think he was probably 19 or something, if that, another young person. So it's kind of great, the legacy of the festival and the people who saw it back then, and it really did represent something a little strange. And, of course, Larry's doing one. And then we have an animator, and I have two sets of sister twins that are part of the festival. One, Joy and Noelle, they're incredible animators. They have a show right now called Human Kind Of on Facebook Live. That's lovely. And I meant to have a little list of superlatives here because I feel like I'm going to keep repeating amazing and incredible because all these people are
talented.
Amazing, terrifyingly talented.
That's a good one. And has alliterative.
I love the alliterations. Yes, it's true. And Jessica Grindstaff, she is from a very, the Hollywood world of theater and avant-garde sort of puppetry and marionette work. She just had a big show at BAM. It's really, really cool to see how many different visions are coming in, and sometimes I'll invite someone who does live action, like Larry Fessenden, for instance. He does known for his dramatic live action horror movies, and he loves to use the festival as a way to get back down on his knees. Sorry, Larry, and pull out all his action figures and do stop motion, which is his first love. Like many filmmakers started out doing stop motion with G.I. Joes and all his action figures, which he has many, and all his Frankensteins and Wolfman. So he's actually off making his right now, and
perhaps most famously, Todd Haynes is. Right, because he started off with the
Karen Carpenter
story, which was not. It wasn't stop animation; it was using puppets, but it was right. It was like
wasn't it
G.I. Joes and
I feel like it was some stop motion. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. You think they were holding the dolls by the legs and just walking them through the frame?
I think that was it with the hands. I just remember. I don't think it was even stop motion.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
I think it's a fun way. I always say, like, I start a lot of animators. You start because you can control. You don't have to worry about lunch hours and schedules and catering. You can control your actors, not unlike Hitchcock. They're like puppets, and then often you then move into live. Some people move into live action, but Yes, and the other one I'm excited about is I actually teach at the Lower East Side Girls Club, and there's a filmmaking program there, and I teach primarily animation there. But and in general, their mission is really about activism and social justice issues.
This is the Lower East Side Girls Club?
Lower East Side Girls Club here in New York. And so when I invited them, I wasn't sure if it was really on their mission, because horror and social activism and that kind of thing sometimes is not like a match made in heaven. But they were excited that the girls could experience making a short film in a genre that they're all love and passionate about,
loves horror.
And just sort of analyzing, what's a jump scare? How are those made? And so they're blending live action, animation.
Now that you mentioned jump scare, why don't you tell my listeners what that is?
Oh, a jump scare. Well, it's funny because I wish Larry was here. So the jump scare is a fun thing to analyze, where the camera is. You basically establish a shot. Let's say that someone goes in to wash their hands at the mirror. You are at the mirror. You look up. You're looking at them. They're looking at the camera like they're popping a zit or whatever. Then the camera follows them down. As they look down, they wash their hands. Then when the camera follows you back up, there's something behind you.
Yeah.
Or the classic one, you go to open the cupboard door, you open the cupboard, you get your thing, and when you close the cupboard door, someone's right where the door was. So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of fun because, when teaching young filmmakers, you realize, and these are teenage girls, to think of the language of cinema, and whether your camera is still, whether it's moving, is all a language in the visual, in cinema making, which is really fun for them to learn, and to have like a project that's a really playful short has let them do that. So it's really cool.
Well, it's kind of funny because the filmmaker, one of their jobs, and it's not always a choice they make, but it is generally the case where a filmmaker will try to make themselves invisible as they make their film.
Yeah.
So when you're watching, like these young girls or anybody, they don't think what the filmmaker is doing with their camera or the choices they're making in order to manipulate you, But once you bring it to their attention, it's like, wow, they're doing that on purpose, and so it's it is, I could see how that could be very
and I also, because sometimes when you're teaching, you're always trying to figure out what's the best assignment. And I know sometimes, like if you're taking a poetry class, rather than saying like, here's your poems, often they'll give you like, here are 5 Emily Dickinson poems. Write a poem using, sort of gel her style and write a poem in her style. And so you might feel, well, that's not original. But what's really fun is sometimes when you just slip the shoes on of like a certain trope, and in horror, there are like the jump scare, for instance, is a trope. It's fun for them to use that as almost like a crutch, but it then, and in the long run, frees them up to feel like, oh, I did that. And then how will you build on that? How will you what will your jump scare do? How will it be different? And
No, I can see that. It's a jumping off place. At least you have some place to jump off from.
Definitely.
As opposed to the blank pages is terrifying.
Yeah, a lot of it is just also making them feel confident that they can make a movie themselves, because it still feels like this thing that other people do,
Right. Exactly. Okay, so the Creepy Christmas Film Festival, is it something people go online and see? Is that the...
Yes. So it works like an advent calendar, only you're clicking on little boxes on your computer. So every day we will premiere, and I want to stress again, these movies are original. They were created for Creepy Christmas. They're short. You're going to go onto the website, creepychristmasfest.com. Every day there'll be the movie of the day on the homepage. You'll watch that. You can click another link and find out everything about the filmmaker. Each person this time, we didn't send objects to them. What we did is once they said yes, we reached into a Santa hat that had 25 holiday-themed words like gingerbread, mistletoe, Santa, stocking, Christmas tree, and we pulled one out and we said, that's your word. So in this case, when you click more about the filmmaker, you also see like what their word was, how they felt about their prompt. Like I would say it's very interesting. 3 of the people did pieces that were really inspired by haunting memories they had of family Christmases or their family things that are going on with them right now. Dreams. I really love reading the array of things that people say was their reaction. You get the word. I, for instance, got a word that I was extremely unhappy with. My friend was here, who is also a participant. She's here from Portland. I said, let's draw each other's word. So she's like, okay. So she drew, and she pulled out the word toys. And she looked at it like, toys? What? And meanwhile, that's my jam. Like, I'm all about old toys, old dolls, whatever. I reached in and pulled out the word Christmas tree. I went blank. She's like, oh my God, I'm in Portland. There's beautiful old growth forests. I love trees, whatever. So we looked at each other and I'm like, hey, I'm the curator of this thing. And I was like, you know what? No, this is the serendipity. I chose this word. You chose your word.
Right.
And I really struggled with my word. When I first was doing it, there was an idea that came into my head. I kept pushing it away. And albeit this was last January. January 2018 is when we sent the invitation out. So a lot of people, when they get the word, it's not like when you think of a film on your own and you're like, my passion is guitars and I can't wait to write that movie about guitars. Suddenly you get this word. It may or may not have any relevance to you, but that's your lot in
may
life.
Take you out of your comfort zone.
It takes
no
you.
swapsies.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there was no swapsies. No.
Swapsies.
Yeah.
Very good. So what's the site so people can...
so it's
and it starts on December.
December 1st. December 1st is when it begins.
Through Christmas
December
Eve.
1st through 25th. Every day a new movie. So it's creepychristmasfest.com. And what's cool is on the actual site, there's a little calendar device so that let's say that you don't really hear about the festival until December 6th, or you're busy, or you're out of town, or you don't have any internet. You can go on to the calendar and catch up on all the back movies. And I was joking with a friend of mine the other day. I said, instead of watching one a day, that some people are going to want to save up and watch 5 in a row.
Right.
So you'll be able to do that. And that's all valid. You can binge. You can do it. You can have a new premiere every day, or you can binge, because the cool thing is if they're short, you can still set aside 15 minutes of your day and binge 3 at a time.
I love cats.
Yes, my cat is here.
My cat's great.
My cat's Scout.
Which one is this?
Scout.
Hey, Scout.
Yeah, she doesn't purr. She's in like stranger in the house mode.
I see. Very sweet. I'm glad we were able to get this in time so people can start right at the very beginning. We'll post this right before the 1st, actually, and then I'll plug away. So tell me a little bit about yourself also, since we're...
oh, yeah. So
tell me, like, where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Florida. And I did not play with dolls when I was growing up, but I do now.
We are starting to understand the mind frame of this woman here.
I mean, I think it's actually, I have this really amazing book called On Dolls, and it's got all these very heady essays about the psychology of people that are into the
adults.
Uncanny nature of not only dolls, but just, all the things of that nature. And in horror, of course, dolls are ripe.
Since we're
for
on
scary
that,
stuff.
Let's go on that tangent for a second, because what are your thoughts? Obviously, you've given it a lot of, I'm assuming, your time and attention. Why dolls can be so creepy, especially like a whole gaggle of them with their black eyes just staring off.
Yes.
Why is that image, which is also a trope, by the way, because we've seen it in lots of films and TV.
Yeah.
There's
an essay
Is it the lifelessness of it?
Yeah, it's funny. There's an essay by Freud called The Uncanny, and it really addresses why something
funny, I was doing him a minute ago. I was analyzing you, Anna O.
Were you? Oh, yeah. Well, I'm all about analysis.
Okay.
So this essay, The Uncanny, it's fabulous, and basically it talks about how things that the thing about a doll is it's really an effigy. It really is like a human, and yet so not a human. And there is something uncanny. It's a monster looks like a monster. It's different. The doll is so much like us, so similar in so many ways, and yet has that thing I think that we all fear, which is that you're like, is there something going on in there, or is it just frozen? Does it move when I'm out of the room? And I think depending upon how twisted you are, you then, some people look at my work and they're like, I cannot look at your stuff. And other people get it, get the doll thing, But I love, this is the first, in January I started the Creepy Christmas Fest Instagram, and one of the biggest people that follow the whole community of kind of online creepy doll people, that's been, wonderful to sort of discover.
You found your tribe.
A little bit my tribe, yeah, exactly. Oddities. There's something about, I think, Velveteen Rabbit has that horse that says basically like when you lose all your fur and when you sort of when your legs are kind of broken, that's when you've been loved enough, and that's when you become real. So there is something about the worn out toys and the discarded dolls that also represent, that was left behind. And actually, even now, I'm so excited when I see a kid dragging around a stuffed animal or dragging around a doll, because I do feel like toys and the role that they played and kind of pretend and everything is changing dramatically.
Yes.
Because of, I think, devices
Phones.
and whatnot.
Yeah, screens.
Yeah, and even Lego, even my kid spanned the period of like playing with Lego more intuitively versus playing with it like following step 1, step 2 and kind of regimented way of making the kit.
Well, unfortunately, Lego, since you brought it up, I know my son is still, even at 14, still something of a collector, but he makes his own customs. But he, it's every franchise, every movie, every has their own Lego sets.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's kind of taken some of that organic fantasy play out of it because you're trying to reproduce what you see in the movies.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you grew up in Florida.
Where
in Florida did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town called Ormond Beach, which was a beach town. My father was into antique cars, so I started going to antique markets really young.
Right.
And he would be off doing the cars, and I would be wandering around looking at all the creepy old dolls.
So it did start prior to your marriage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean...
why didn't you have dolls?
I didn't play with dolls. I would take them out in the yard and leave them in these scenarios. Like I would set up a campsite and then I'd leave them out there for like 2 months at a time.
Yeah.
And then go back and see how they'd survived.
Okay.
To see if they'd... Yeah, but I never really, played with
bring Freud back into the conversation.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Continue.
Yeah.
So you grew up...
so I grew up in Florida. And I always like spooky movies. I mean, I have a different horror vibe. Larry and I definitely bonded over horror, but have a slightly different, a different taste. I'm more into like haunted house, spooky, eerie, uncanny, things like that, as opposed to like horror with maybe guts and stuff like that.
Oh, right, yeah. The blood and guts, right.
Yeah. Of which there's some. Ironically, my piece, when I got the word Christmas tree in January, what I was surrounded with in New York City were all of the landscape that everyone who lives here knows, all of the trees being thrown out, stacked up, piled up. It's extremely evocative when you see it. And I was like, I got to make a movie with all those abandoned trees, and
they're like corpses.
They're like it's so great. I had so many ideas, but I wasn't. It was too soon. Like I was not ready to make my creepy Christmas movie. So I had another idea that kept kind of badgering me, and that's the one. I had to finish up a project, then I threw myself into it, and it really, ironically, as my cats are here, it's kind of inspired by it's bloodier than my usual work. And it's really kind of inspired by the murderous nature of my cats. They go outside upstate in the summer, and
really,
I love my cats. They're beautiful, but they kill things. And I think it's also, for me, became a metaphor of my character is very artistic, but he's like a cat. He kills things. So, but he makes art from it. So I think it also is a bit of a metaphor for me of living with a film producer, living in the arts, of how sometimes, when to make a cake, you have to break a few eggs. Sometimes in the artistic process, some blood is drawn. So that's kind of where I ended up going with mine. Yeah.
Maybe I can get a little, maybe I can get an advance, maybe audio or something. We can play a little audio from your short.
That would be great. Yeah, the audio environment would be funny for mine, because there's a lot of Larry actually voices my character. I voice the other character. There's two characters in mine that are kind of like it's a kind of a buddy movie, and he voices the kind of Tom Waits-ish character, and I voice the sort of voice. And I voice the other character who's really maybe the brains behind the brawn. And so mine has a lot of like growling and gobbling and screaming sounds like that.
Oh, good. Okay, that'll work for my podcast just very well.
Yeah, exactly. Screaming animals, but no real animals.
Understood. Yeah. So you grew up getting an idea of your childhood. Sounds like you played alone a lot. Did you have something?
I am. Well, my sister is 10 years older than me.
Oh, I see that. So sure. Yeah. Generation older.
Yeah.
And then
the other thing is I am adopted, and I think that is is something we won't go too deep into here, but I definitely think more than playing alone is, I think for sure, I had a very rich fantasy life about alternative realities because, when you're adopted, you have the family that you live with, and then you also have this notion that there's another situation out there. Yeah.
Where you're missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I think I also had a very deep, fantasy. I think life. I played alone a lot too as a choice, but it never really goes away. I mean, it really, even as an adult, well, you kind of get that Peter Pan adult thing where you do grow up into an adult, responsible and taking care of other people, but that element is always there, in a significant way, which isn't in the buttoned up types you feel like you don't quite can relate to.
I mean, it's very interesting because I think you find that person that finds their balance with a little bit of alone time, and then you find people who need that hustle all the time in all walks of life. I know, for instance, Larry, who's a very social person and very got his fingers in a lot of projects and whatnot. When we first met, we were like, yeah, I like to be alone. And he was like, me too. And then we were like, well, let's be alone together. So
well, you set your boundaries.
We both like to also spend a tremendous amount of solitary time, which I think is so, I feel blessed in both ways that we both get that, and we don't think are you ignoring me? And so
all tenacious and dependent and codependent, whatever.
Well, not only that, but making art is also you have to make those tough decisions on a Saturday night when your friends are like, come out to this gallery opening, and you're surrounded with your set and your puppets, and you're like, dude, I really have to put in some unadulterated weird time in here, and I just need to do that.
Sure. How'd you meet? You guys?
Yeah, so Larry and I lived very close. I was on 13th Street and First Avenue, and he was on 12th Street and First Avenue. And my roommate and I worked in advertising at the time. I was an art director, and she went swimming at the pool on 14th Street. So we were thick as thieves, and we got up to all sorts of mischief together. We were besties. And then suddenly she came back from the pool one day, and she'd met a guy in the pool, and they became hooked up. So I lost my best friend. I was like, ugh. And then she's like, he has a best friend. And I was like, I'm sure he does. And sure enough, that was Larry. So a couple twists and turns later, I did start to hang out with Larry. And then we switched apartments, and I lived with him, and she lived with his roommate. And so that's how we met. So we met in the East Village, and at the time I was working in advertising. Then I started working in theater, doing props in theater. And then finally we started collaborating. I started making props for some of his films and art directing them. And I did that for a while, production and art direction, and we co-wrote a script or two together. And then we were working on a movie, and the hierarchy on film sets is intense. When you're the director, it's people kowtow to you, but the art department, which I think is the most important department, works so hard, but sometimes they don't really get the respect they should. And I was on a set, and I was looking for a broom, and I'd asked Grips. I'd asked a lot of people about this broom. No one knew where a broom was. Larry came over, and he's like, what are you up to? And I was like, I just want to clean this area up. I'm looking desperately for a broom. He turned to somebody and said, is there a broom around? And I heard 14 walkie-talkies going off asking for a broom, and it was because the director had asked for a broom and not the art director. So anyway, I learned to bring my own broom. No, I just realized I had so many other interests I wanted to do. I started designing software for kids at Scholastic. I published a children's newspaper. I love teaching. I love traveling. So I kind of got out of the film business. I have jumped back in for some close friends to do production design. And for my son, I did design his movie. But otherwise, I love, I'm just really passionate about animation. And I can just go, people will be like, how do you have the patience? And I'm like, you don't understand. This is my world. I love it.
Yeah, it's truly is the process. That is, I guess, the maybe the most gratifying part of it. I don't know.
Well, for sure. I mean,
it's in a typical film, you're trying to make a finished product.
Yeah.
And then get the reaction to it and be able to see it. It's available. But if it's actually more, it really is about the process of creation.
I mean, working in the art departments on bigger movies, I've definitely met some of my best friends, and it's a great. And I also think it's why my son, who grew up going on movie sets, he didn't really experience the glamour of film. He basically experienced me, the art department, distressing furniture, running around with the lead builders and running, gunning, and making stuff and having fun. And it is a wonderful environment. I just felt like for me, I preferred, in a way, I am directing now. I mean, I'm coming up with my own stories. I'm directing. I mean, I do music video and other stuff, but I just like, now when I have to move a couch, it's only 5 inches big or something. It's like I like taking that world and shrinking it down so it's manageable. I also can work with 1 or 2 people instead of on a film set. You have to wrangle so many personalities. That can be challenging. But yeah, I also love the physical in stop motion, which is the medium I work in primarily. I love it blends puppetry. I mean, I spend most of the time making stuff with my hands. Then at the end, I shoot stuff. But it also keeps me away from 24/7 on the computer, which would have been probably, a different animation if I'd taken that up. Yeah, so it's my passion. I love it. I love how much cool animation is out there now. There's so many people doing incredible stop motion.
Yeah.
I think all the digital cameras out there have made it a lot. I mean, I shot my first animation on 16, and then I shot some stuff on Super 8, and that's nerve-wracking, waiting to see if you got it when it came back, And but now there's so much out there and so many different styles, and it's really exciting. So, yeah.
I'm going to send Jacob.
I'm hooked.
I think when Jacob's a little older, I'll send him over here to intern for you.
Yeah, definitely.
He's totally, I think he really would love to ramp things up. You know what I mean? Rather than just with his iPhone, his tripod. And his...
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I've walked a lot of kids through. When I teach, I use a lot of the time the iPad because it's great. There are programs in it. You can use iStop Motion, but you can also use drawing applications. And it's a great little camera. You put that thing on a little tripod. It's super, and it's very portable. People get all geared out. Like one guy, Joe Maggio, came upstate, and he shot on Alexa. It's beautiful. It's very fancy. I shot on, Canon 5D. Some people are shooting Super 8. I mean, so it's really, it's a well-trodden line, but, it's really more what you're making than the equipment you use.
Yeah, right. Well, again, people can go to creepychristmasfest.com starting December 1st, right up through Christmas Day, and see a new short film every day. And it's all being curated by our friend Beck Underwood.
And Ben Duff. And Glass Eye.
D-U-F-F? Ben Duff?
Yeah. And Glass Eye Picks. I mean, it's been really fun there's so many people going in and out of Glass Eye. And it's been, it's really great to sort of have an eye on like, oh, that person always has these cool ideas, and maybe they haven't had a chance to make a movie yet. A lot of the filmmakers just kind of wait in this development hell where they're waiting to get their feature film made.
Right.
And this is a way to say like, oh my God, let's just totally make this short film, and let's just use an idea that you could never talk anyone into approving, and I'll approve it. I try not to know ahead of time what people are doing for sure.
Right.
Because I didn't get into it to be a producer per se, but I would say in general the feedback that I get from the people involved is, I don't know what the first word of this would be, is the mother of invention. Whether it's like getting a call out of the blue to be in this friggin' festival, having people drop out, whatever it is, the mother of invention is basically what Creepy Christmas Fest represents, and people get very creative, and I love that.
Well, thank you. It was nice to chat with you.
Tell me when we're done.
It's over.
I know. I sat here with like this calendar thinking I'm going to say something about every single person.
Oh, well.
But it's cool. No, but it's good.
Most it would be cool. Is there anything on there that you can't show? Like, is there anything? Is there any sensitive information on any of that? Like, this movie sucks, bury it.
Oh, no, not at all.
Because it would, maybe I'll just, I could accompany the,
no, and
like
most
the
of all, the
podcast
visuals
with,
are so different, but yeah, I mean, I can always say.